Okay, so in those retail or office space that you got involved with, I mean, obviously they're two different, like they're totally different from single
Completely
family,
different.
obviously,
Yeah.
right? So how did you even consider like, okay, how I'm gonna underwrite this deal, and how do you even come up with the vision of like, okay, I'm gonna convert this office into this, co-space type of office, and I mean, like, what do you do?
I wish I had a more intelligent answer of how we figured it out, right?
Well, if
And
you just went and got high and just figure it came to you, it's fine.
yeah, I mean, so I got exposed to co-working, specifically that business. Let's talk about that for a second, right? So I got
Uh-huh.
exposed to co-working when I lived in New York, right? This was before
Yeah,
WeWork, before any of that.
yeah.
I was officed in a one of these buildings in New York, and I just
Hmm.
did the napkin math of like, hey, look at this price per foot this stuff is renting at. It's crazy, right? Like it was a
Hmm.
teeny tiny desk, like a bunch of us were crammed together like, like sardines. And I was like, "Wow, we're paying like $700 a desk, $800 a desk, and sometimes even more than that." And I was like,
Yeah.
if you just do the math here, this thing is crazy cash flow, right? But this
Uh-huh.
was New York, and I was like, okay, this isn't some big fancy office building, 50 million, $100 million building. So like this, this works for them. I was like, could this be replicated in a market like Houston? So then when I
Hmm.
moved back to Houston, I started looking around, like, is there anything? So the closest was executive suites, right? But the
Yeah.
executive suites was very like, they nickel and dimed for everything, and I was like, there's probably some middle ground here, right, where it's
Hmm.
like, we're not like heavily running a day-to-day business here, like operation, but like we offer some amenities that kind of bring the value up for people to want to work there. So I said, look, first let's start with the cool building. And so it was a partner and we had talked about the concept, and he really loved the concept. We had anchored ourselves in the technology community, right? So like tech startups and things like that. And so we felt like, okay, they would pay a premium rent, but they needed a cool place, right?
Hmm.
And they wanted to be surrounded by each other. So we like found a really cool warehouse in East Downtown. Uniquely, it had already the bones of what
Hmm.
it, like was cool, modern. It had all
Hmm.
this like kind of fancy decor, and it was a guy
Hmm.
that had built an warehouse to live in, and he was living out of it. So it was like a house. So it went
Yeah.
on MLS as a house, but it was a warehouse. And then when we tried to buy it as a house, the bank said, no way, this is not a house, this is a commercial
Yeah.
building. So we had to talk to a commercial bank, and they're like, okay, what is your plan? And we kind of gave them kind of like, okay, we're going to chop this thing up and sell memberships and desks and like a few offices. And a simple napkin was like, thankfully we bought it well. But if we had just leased the three offices, it had three offices and then there's this open space. If we had just leased the three offices, we had covered our debt, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then all the desks, we had this like open area, which would have been community space or, open desk space. We had about 25, 30 of those at like $300, $400 a month each, right? So if we had, that would have been all the upside. So like if
Yeah.
we just got stabilized on the three offices, we're okay. And then after that, so they're like, okay, that's we can buy into that plan. And then what happened was the first 6 months we had no tenants. And it was like it was miserable, right? We were burning
Yeah.
cash every month. And
Yeah.
what we did was we kept hosting these meetups at our
Right.
space inch
Hmm.
by inch to kind of get people familiar because nobody in Houston really even knew what co-working was. They were like, what do
Right.
you mean? Like we're renting by the desk. And then
Was this
slowly,
pre-COVID time?
this was way pre-COVID. Yeah, this was
Okay.
2018, 2017. Yeah, this was
Okay.
very
Okay.
early,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That was really new at the time. Yeah.
It was
That
new. There was no
I think
WeWork.
actually at that time I was in a one of these like St. Regis or
Yeah,
Boxer property,
yeah.
like where you get a
Boxer, yeah, that's right.
small office. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
the Boxer guy's a good friend of ours now. So like and because of this co-working space. So
Yeah.
anyways, long story short, so we tested the model. We slowly got some traction. It took a lot of marketing, a lot of educating, and then finally we started selling these memberships, right? And so we
Hmm.
ended up getting 1, 2, 5, 10. And then once we got some like tipping point of density where the occupancy was up, then it
Hmm.
became like a thriving building because there was people
Hmm.
coming and going all the time. There was events, there was activity, there was people constantly officing out of it. And then it started really doing well. So at our peak, like I mentioned, we were doing almost 20K a month, right? It was crazy. It took a while to get there, right? So there was a combination of like desk rentals, there was office space rentals, there was event income. So like people rent out the space for like, meetups or whatever the case may be. So it was great, but it was just a very active business. And because there was so much activity, there was a constant maintenance, right? Like day-to-day cleaning and event management and scheduling and all kind of what you do in the short-term rental business, right? And so I was like,
Yeah.
this is a lot of effort, right? And so we had like a dedicated staff member, and it was just like a full-time body there, and it was just so much, right?
Right.
And so it just felt like it was hard to scale that, right? We didn't want to be in the sub-renting business, so like kind of scaling like a WeWork. So we would have to buy more of these locations, and there's people that have done that, that have done really well. There's a local guy, local office. I don't know if you've seen those guys. He's done Scott Rubenstein. He's done a great job of what he's done with that. They own some prime real estate, and they put these locations in them, right?
What do they call? What is this company called?
It's called Local Office.
Local office? Okay.
Yeah, it's a good name. And so he's done really well. But again, we just felt like that was not the journey we wanted to be on. So we ended up exiting the building. So the building did really well on sale. And then we kind of basically got out of the business.
Did they continue that business or you?
Yeah. We had two sides. We sold the building to just kind of a real estate buyer.
Yeah.
And then we sold that kind of operational business to a company that ended up becoming Station Houston, which is now the Ion. I don't know if you're familiar with that in Midtown area.
Seems like I've seen it.
Yeah, it's a big, beautiful kind of community building for the tech community.
Well, we're sidetracking here for a minute.
Sorry,
because
yeah.
I'm all about the co-working, right? Because I used to have a dedicated office, and then I find that nobody ever come. Like, I mean, sometimes I'm out on the field all the time. I don't show up, and then my coordinator or project manager will be there all lonesome, right? So I'm like,
Yep.
I want to buy a building and I want to create a space, but from what I'm hearing about you, it's like, do I really want to go through that trouble?
I mean, I would say that if you limited the amenities and resources, it's a great concept, right? If you have a nice boutique building, maybe 5-10 offices, you're renting, and then you do some basic amenities, right? We were doing everything. Like we had Monster energy drinks in the fridge, we had coffee, we had free Wi-Fi, we had all these things, right? And each level of that, which I learned, requires maintenance and management, right? And so like making sure our coffee machine was filled every day, making sure that the trash is empty every night, like that was a recurring thing. Yes, we had staff and like kind of vendors that handled all of it, but somebody had to pay attention to all of it, right? And so it just became too much for us. So like I think we went too extreme, like we had just too much amenities and things. If I had dialed it back to purely like a executive suite plus, right? Like I think it'd be still a great business. And again, like I wholeheartedly believe you have to own the real estate for it to make any sense to run that, right? If we didn't own the real estate, we would be this, rent arbitrage business, and I don't know if that's an attractive business.
Yeah, it would have to be really market specific, in my opinion, for that to work. Like there got to be enough spread.
Correct.
And in Houston, that might not be the
No,
play.
there's too much occupancy. I mean, there's too much vacancy in your office. So
Yeah.
like you're competing with everybody. I wouldn't we want to bother trying to do that.
So that's what happened when you're trying to be the coolest kid.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your real estate journey. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated with future episodes featuring more industry experts and insightful discussions. And feel free to leave any comments or questions below, as we love hearing from our viewers. Until next time, keep hustling and making waves in the real estate investing world, my friend.